call is now being recorded. So in the previous lecture classes, we have been discussing about efficient power flow in DC to DC converters. And in order for efficient power conversion, we need some lossless electrical circuit elements. And some of the circuit elements that are required to transfer the power from one part of the circuit to the other part of the circuit without any losses, they are switches, inductors, and transformers. Also, the last one is capacitors. Switches, you have studied about switches in detail in the course Power Electronics in the previous semesters. We have seen in detail about the inductors, and in last class we were designing a transformer. So before going to capacitors, in today's class, we will just review how did we design the transformers for 5 minutes. Then we'll go into the capacitors. Can anyone consolidate how do we design the transformers? What is the use of transformers in DC to DC converters? Anyone?
Voltage.
First of all, how many circuit elements we have used for DC to DC power conversion? First circuit element is switch. Second circuit element is inductor. Third circuit element is transformer. And the fourth circuit element is capacitor. So we have discussed about the design of inductors and the transformers in detail in the previous classes. How did we design the transformer? Then what is the use of the transformer? Transformers are used for voltage matching, and it is also used for electrical isolation. So these are the two applications of transformers with respect to DC to DC converters. They are also used for impedance matching or maximum power flow. That is in power systems. As far as this switched mode power conversion circuits, especially DC to DC converters, transformers were used for voltage matching and electrical isolation. And you know, for an ideal transformer, the power conversion is unity, efficiency of power conversion is unity. And the forward voltage conversion ratio V1 by V2 and the reverse current conversion ratio I2 by I1 were related by the ratio of number of turns of the primary and secondary, N1 by N2. V1 by V2 was equal to I2 by I1 equal to N1 by N2. And we replace the primary with the constant current source and replace the secondary with the constant dependent voltage source. And this is, we have chosen a toroidal core similar to the inductor. And like inductors, the transformers do not store energy. They don't have any air gap like the inductors. Usually EE cores were used. And we derived the relationship between the area of the core to the voltage and the area of the winding to the current. For that, we considered a square wave application to the primary winding, and we found out what is the flux. What is the flux value? Flux was fluctuating between phi m and plus phi m to minus phi m. So taking into this concept, we found out what is the relationship between area of the core and the voltage. So area of the core and the voltage were related by these equations. V1 equal to 4N1 B1 AC into Fs, the primary voltage. Secondary voltage V2 equal to 4 Bm N2 AC into Fs. AC is the area of the core, Bm is the maximum flux density of the core, N2 is the number of turns of the secondary, Fs is the switching frequency of operation of the transformer. So next we moved on to the window space factor, or the relationship between the window area AW and the current. So N1A1 plus N2A2, the number of turns multiplied by the area of cross section of the conductor, plus N2, number of turns of the secondary multiplied by the area of cross section of the secondary conductor, was equal to the window space vector into the area of the window. So A1, the area of the cross section, can be written as current by current density. From this, we can relate the area of the window to the current. Previously, we related the area of the core to the voltage. Now we are relating the area of the window to the current. Then we multiplied both and we found out what is the core area product. Area product AC into AW was equal to V1 I1 RMS divided by 2 BM FSJ into AW. And this was the first step, or the basic equation from which we consolidated the 11 steps in designing the transformer. So any design, whether it can be inductor or transformer, requires you to find out the area product first. Area product equation. Area product equation means it is a product of area of the core and the area of the window. Once you arrive at this equation from the wire tables or core tables, by the whole use of wire tables and core tables, you will be able to design appropriate transformers and inductors for our particular application. In this equation, AC and AW are related to the VA rating. V1 into I1 RMS is the VA rating, inversely proportional to maximum flux density, inversely proportional to switching frequency, and inversely proportional to the current density, and also the window space factor. So once you know all these parameters, you can calculate the amount of energy that is stored by that is transferred by the transformer from the primary to the secondary. And you can choose an appropriate size of the core for transfer of energy. So inputs were all these parameters: rating, current density, voltage primary, voltage in the secondary, maximum flux density, the window space factor, frequency of operation. And with the help of wire and core tables, we were consolidating the steps for designing a transformer. The first step was computing the area product AC into AW. You already know this equation: V1 I1 RMS divided by 2 BM FSJ into KW. So from this, using the core table, we found out what is the type of the core. From AC and AW, we found out area product. From the area product, we found out what is the type of the core. After finding out the type of the core, we can fix the area of the core and area of the window. That is step 3. And step 4 was computing the number of turns. Similar to the inductor, the number of turns have to be computed from the voltage equation. V1 was equal to 4 N1 BM AC into Fs. V2 was equal to 4 BM AC into Fs into N2. So from that equation, you computed the number of turns. After calculating the number of turns, you can calculate the size of the secondary and the primary conductors. Secondary and the primary conductors can be calculated using this formula: current by current density. Current by current density. And after calculating the area, you can calculate the desired wire size, that is in gauges. Whether you need a 50 SWG or 49 or 48, 47, you can decide the desired wire size. And we computed the number of primary turns, the length of the primary turns and secondary turns, and mean length from the core data sheet using the mean length per turn, using the mean length per turn. And from the wire table, you can also calculate the primary and secondary resistance also. From the area, we calculated the size, and also from the area, you can calculate the primary and secondary resistance also. And finally, the reluctance of the core you can calculate using the length of the mean magnetic path LC, or the length of the core L by UA. That is the formula: LC divided by AC into mu naught into mu1. And the last step, we computed the magnetizing inductance. L equal to, you know the formula, N square mu A by L. So that is written as N square by R. R is the reluctance. You know the permeability of the core material, the length of the magnetic path, area of cross section, everything you know. So you can compute the reluctance. So from the reluctance, you can compute the magnetizing inductance. Lm was equal to N square by. So this was the procedure we followed for the design of the transformers. So now we will go to the last and the easiest element to study for power conversion, which is the capacitors. Before going into the capacitors, these are the elements which are used for lossless power conversion in DC to DC converters. The first element were switches. This course doesn't deal with the switches since we have already studied in power electronics, the subject power electronics, different types of switches and their characteristics. We are not dealing with the switches. Switches are used to control and flow the energy from one part of the circuit to other part of the circuit. The second elements are inductors. Inductors, you know, they store the energy and to smoothen the power flow. The transformers, they are used for matching voltage levels and also for isolation, electrical isolation, that is. And capacitors, coming to the capacitors, the last element for efficient power conversion, they are also used to store the energy and smoothen the power flow from load to source. Similar to inductors, they are also used to smoothen the power flow from the source to the load. So during the operation of the switches, there is discontinuity in the power flow. You have seen in the last class itself, there is discontinuity in the power flow. In order to smoothen the power flow, we are going to use inductors and capacitors. So same concept as the inductors. Capacitors are also used to store the energy and smoothen the power flow from the source to the load. Coming to the capacitors again, they store the energy in the form of electric field. Whereas in the inductors you have seen, they have stored, inductors store energy in the form of magnetic field. The capacitors store the energy in the form of electric field. So this is an important point to be noted. In this class, we are going to discuss about the various properties of capacitors. What is its principle of operation? What is its characteristic equation? What is the process by which the energy is stored in the capacitor? Types of the capacitors, and how does the capacitors get specified? What are the specifications of the capacitors? All this we are going to see in this class. So capacitors store energy in the form of electric field. They are used to smoothen the power flow that is arising because of discontinuity that is arising by the operation of the switches. And the last is, it is used in protection circuits, or these protection circuits are otherwise called as switching aid networks. They are also called as switching aid networks. They provide a turn off dV by dt protection. You already know when you are closing or opening a switch, a severe voltage or current stress gets applied on the switches. So in order to prevent the turn on dI by dt surge, we are going to use inductors in order to provide a turn off dV by dt surge. So when you turn off the switch, there will be a huge over voltage spike that will happen. So in order to prevent that spike or increase in the voltage, we are going to use capacitors, which will protect the switches from getting damaged because of the severe voltage spike during turn off. So basically, they are used for turn off dV by dt protection. So two functions of capacitors in DC-DC converters are smoothen the power flow and turn off dV by dt protection, similar to the inductor. Inductor was turn on dI by dt production. Capacitors turn off dV by dt protection. So let us see what are the characteristics variables of capacitors and the circuit equation of the capacitors. So capacitor is denoted by the letter C, and V is the voltage across the capacitor, and I is the current flowing through the capacitor between the two terminals of the capacitor. So basically, you can call the voltage, the capacitance, and the current as the electrical quantities of the capacitors. So the electric circuit equation of the capacitors can be written in two forms. The first form is called as the differential form, and the second form is called as the integral form. So what does the differential form say? The current through the capacitor is equal to or directly proportional to the change in the voltage dV by dt. Current is directly proportional to the change in the voltage between the two terminals, and the proportionality constant and proportionality can be removed with the help of a constant, and that constant is called as the capacitance C. So I equal to C into dV by dt. I is the current flowing through the capacitor, V is the voltage across the capacitor, C is the capacitance value. So this is called as the differential equation of the differential element, circuit element equation of the capacitor. Coming to the integral form, V of t equal to V1 at t equal to 0 plus 1 by c integral 0 to t I into dt. So V of t is the voltage as a function of time. Voltage of the capacitor as a function of time is nothing but the initial voltage V1 because of the accumulation of or leftover charges during the previous discharge cycle. This is the voltage V1 at t equal to 0. The initial voltage V1 at t equal to 0 plus 1 by c into integral of 0 to t I into dt. I into dt is the quantity of charge that is applied. Quantity of charge that is applied to the capacitor. I into dt is nothing but ampere seconds. Ampere seconds over one interval 0 to t. So these are the circuit element equations, electrical circuit element equation for a capacitor. Can be expressed in two terms, two forms. One is the differential form and other one is the integral form. The differential form is I equal to C into dV by dt, and the integral form is V of t equal to V1 or Vi plus 1 by C integral 0 to t I into dt. You can call it as V1 or Vi, small I, initial voltage. Hope you are clear with the circuit element equation. Now, I am taking the integral form equation of the capacitor. V of t equal to V1 plus 1 by C integral of 0 to t I into dt. What is this integral of 0 to t I into dt? I into integral of 0 to t I into dt is the charge supplied at any time. It is the amount of charge that is supplied at any time for the capacitor. I into dt is nothing but the ampere second. I already told you it is the ampere second. So instead of this integral of 0 to t I into dt, I will replace it by the charge q. So this equation will become V of t equal to V1 plus q by c. So from this, you can understand the capacitor stores energy by accumulation of charges. Capacitor stores the energy by accumulation of charges. So when you increase the charge density between the two plates of the capacitor, the amount of energy that is stored can also be increased. So this is the basic principle. When you increase the charge, the capacitor accumulates the charge and stores more amount of energy. And that was the basic function of a capacitor, right? To smoothen the power flow by storing the energy and giving out whenever it is required. And coming to this charge balance you would have already studied in power electronics. When you consider a periodic circuit and you use a capacitor in periodic circuit, what will happen? The voltage waveform or voltage equation of the capacitor V of t will become V of t plus t. This is the equation for a periodic function. V of t equal to V of t plus t, where t is the time period of the circuit. Where t is the time period of the circuit. First of all, what is a periodic circuit? Circuit which is applied with a periodic input voltage, or the waveform which repeats itself with respect to time again and again. It is called as a periodic waveform. For example, if you use a sine wave which repeats itself again and again after regular intervals of time, it is called as a periodic AC circuit. And if you are going to use the capacitor in this periodic AC circuit, let us see what is going to happen. If you are going to use this capacitor in a circuit which is applied with a periodic input voltage, the voltage equation of the capacitor V of t will be equal to V of t plus t, small t plus capital T, where capital T is the time period of the circuit. Time period means the frequency of the input that is applied to the circuit. So instead of 0 to T, I am changing this equation to be integral limits to 1 by C integral of T to T plus T I into dt. 1 by C integral of T to T plus T I into dt. So 1 by C cannot be equal to 0. So integral of T to T plus T I into dt is equal to 0. So from this, what you can understand, what is integral I dt? You take one cycle and the limits, starting limit is t and the ending limit is t plus t. This is one cycle. For one cycle, I into dt equal to 0. What is the meaning? Anyone?
There is no charge stored.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
No charge is stored.
Yes, very good. Accumulation of charges is 0. I already told you the capacitor stores the energy by accumulation of charges. So accumulation of charges in one cycle will be equal to 0, or the ampere second integral over one cycle will be equal to 0. So in periodic AC accumulation, in application, the net charge accumulation in one cycle will be equal to 0. So this is called as the ampere second equation. Ampere second integral of 0 to integral of t to t plus t I into dt will be equal to 0. Ampere second integral over one cycle will be equal to 0. What is the meaning of this? What is integral I dt is nothing but the voltage. So if the voltage is V at the starting of a cycle, at the starting of the next cycle, it will also be the same V. Suppose if it is 10 volts at the starting of the first cycle, it will be 10 volts at the starting of the second cycle, because charges are not accumulated each cycle. So periodic AC application, the net charge accumulation in one cycle is 0. So this can be explained with the help of this waveform. The first waveform is nothing but the first waveform is nothing but the. Can you see the mouse pointer? Yes. The first waveform is nothing but the voltage across a capacitor. This is a typical voltage waveform of the capacitor. And the second is the current arising because of the voltage between the two plates applied between the two plates of the capacitor. You know the capacitor current I equal to C into dV by dt. What is the formula for I? The differential circuit element equation, I equal to C into dV by dt. So I is directly proportional. The current, the second waveform is directly proportional to dV by dt. And if you remove that proportionality constant and change that equation, you will get I equal to C into dV by dt. The proportionality constant is C. So let us take into account this waveform. The voltage initially ramps up from 0 to 5, and afterwards it is remaining constant from 5 to 15 milliseconds, and from 15 to 20 millisecond it ramps down, and from 20 to 30 millisecond it goes to 0, and there is a sinusoidal decrease in the voltage between 30 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds, and again there is a 0 voltage between 50 to 60 millisecond, and this cycle is going to continue. So this is one cycle. This is one cycle of voltage across the capacitor. How will you calculate the current? It is nothing but the differentiation of the voltage. It is nothing but the differentiation of the voltage. So when you ramp up, when this voltage is getting ramped up, the current I is nothing but the differentiation of voltage. So what is the difference? The students, wait for 5 seconds. I will come back again. I'm just muting my audio. So coming back, we were discussing about the accumulation of charges over one cycle, which is equal to 0. For that, we have taken into account this waveform. So the voltage waveform was like this, and the current. Am I audible, students? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Kekudappa?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we are trying to calculate what is the current flowing through the capacitor from the voltage. The current can be calculated by differentiating the voltage. Current can be calculated by differentiating the voltage. So when you differentiate a ramp, you will get a square. So this current is constant between 0 to 5. And when you differentiate a constant value, you get a 0 current. From 5 to 20, it will be 0, and it goes down. This discharging of the capacitor will take place here. And the voltage is 0. The discharging of the capacitor will take place between 15 to 20, and the current remains constant. And what is the differentiation of a sine? Differentiation of sine is nothing but cosine. You will get a cosine current. The voltage waveform is sine. So differentiation of sine will be cosine. So from 30 to 50, it will be a cosine waveform, and it repeats. So from this, you can see from 15 to 40. From 15 to 40, how is the current? Current is getting discharged between 15 to 20. It remains constant from 20 to 30, and it goes to 0. It goes to 0 till 40. And the same thing, just the opposite, you can see from 40 to 70. 40 to 70. So this discharging cycle is compensated by this charging cycle. This is positive, this is negative. And again, this negative is compensated by this positive. So what is the accumulation of the charge over one cycle? Accumulation of charge over one cycle is equal to 0. So this waveform is the negative discharging waveform. This is the positive charging waveform. This is the positive charging waveform. In one cycle, these are equal. So from this, you can understand in a periodic AC application, the net charge accumulation over one cycle is 0. So clear? Okay. Can you tell me what will happen to the inductor? Inductor, we call it as a dual of the capacitor. What will happen in the inductor? Anyone? What will happen in the inductor? Inductor, it is the flux. So net flux accumulation per cycle will be equal to 0. So when you look into this equation, integral of t to t plus t, instead of this I, you change it to v. V into dt equal to 0, and that is called as volt second balance in inductor. In capacitor, it is called as ampere second balance. In inductor, it is called as volt second balance. In capacitors, the energy is stored in electric field. That is why we consider the net charge accumulation. Whereas in inductors, the energy is stored in magnetic field. That is why we take into account the net flux accumulation. Net flux accumulation. So this capacitor and inductors are dual to each other. In capacitors, it is ampere second integral over one cycle. In inductors, it is volt second integral over one cycle. And like inductors, we are not going to design the capacitors. Usually, capacitors will not be designed by power electronic engineers for specific applications, but we will select an appropriate capacitors from the manufacturer's catalog. Depending on the capacitance value, the voltage applied across the capacitor, voltage rating of the capacitor, and also the energy. What is the energy? Equal to half CV square. Energy equal to half CV square. In short, we will shortly we will derive that equation of CV square. Like inductors, we are not going to design the capacitors. Suppose if you are a power electronics engineer and if you are going to construct a DC to DC converter, you will not design the inductors. You design the capacitors like the inductors by finding out the area product equation, finding out what is AC, finding out what is AW, and what is the size of the wire, number of turns, everything we will not calculate. Capacitors are manufactured by circuit element manufacturers at different ratings. So we will choose one capacitor among the different capacitors that is available that is made available in the market by the manufacturers. So I will choose these capacitors depending on the capacitance value C, the voltage rating of the capacitor, voltage it has to withstand, and the energy, amount of energy it has to store. So this is what we are going to discuss in the next part of this lecture. Hope it is clear. புரிஞ்சதாப்பா? இது வரைக்கும் என்ன பார்த்தோம்? What did we discuss so far? We have seen what is a capacitor, what is the use of capacitor to store charge and smoothen the power flow, turn off dV by dt production, the characteristic equation in differential form and integral form, and we have seen the ampere second balance in the capacitor. And we are not going to design the capacitor, we are going to choose the capacitor for our DC to DC converter depending on the different types of capacitors that is available in the market. It is made available in the market by the manufacturers. Is it clear? I hope the flow of the lecture is clear. Next we will see how we will decide which capacitor is suitable for us. Before going to choosing the capacitors, we should understand the construction of these capacitors. The construction of the capacitors, there are two terminals. There are two terminals, T1 and T2, and in between the two terminals there will be a dielectric material, and the charge gets stored between the two terminals, that is inside the dielectric material, and the accumulation of charge between these two terminals is the property by which the capacitor stores the energy. Capacitor stores the energy. You should understand there will be charges at the top terminal and there will be charges at the bottom terminal. If both the charges are same, it is called as a unipolar capacitor. If both are different, it is called as bipolar capacitor. Because of the charges present in the top of the upper terminal and the bottom of the lower terminal, there will be an electric field that is set up between the two terminals. There will be an electric field that is set up between the two terminals. So this is just the construction of the capacitor. There are two terminals. You are going to pass the current through the terminals. Because of the current flowing through the terminals, charge gets accumulated at the top terminal, charge gets accumulated at the bottom terminal, and because of these two charges at the top terminal and bottom terminal, electric field is set up. Electric field is set up. And what is the Ohm's law point for a dielectric material? Anyone? Can you tell me the equation for Ohm's law at a point for a dielectric material? We have discussed in the introduction class itself.
J is equal to epsilon E.
What is J? J or D? For an inductor, it was B equal to mu into H. B is the magnetic flux density, mu is the permittivity of the material, H is the magnetic field intensity. So since the inductor is a dual of the capacitor, from that equation, can you tell me what is the Ohm's law at a point for capacitors, dielectric materials? D equal to epsilon into E. D is the dielectric flux density, epsilon is the permittivity property of the dielectric material, and E is the electric field intensity. Electric field intensity is created because of the charges present between the two terminals. So this you have seen in the first class. In a dielectric material, The electric flux density D is proportional to the permittivity of the material and the electric field intensity E. So this is about the construction of the capacitor. Let us come to the packaging at a later part. This is construction. You understand there are two terminals. In between there is a dielectric material, and because of the charges, an electric field is set up. Now let us see what is the charge density of the capacitor and how does the, let us see how does the capacitor stores the charge. Let us take this equation. What is the formula for flux density? What is formula for flux density? This is dielectric flux density. Can you relate the dielectric flux density to area? What is flux density formula?
Flux per area.
Flux phi equal to B into A. Is it not? For a magnetic circuit. For a dielectric circuit, D equal to Q by A, the charge accumulated divided by the area of cross section of the dielectric material. Where is the charge that is present? It is present inside the dielectric material. And A is the area of cross section of the dielectric material. And E is the epsilon. Epsilon is the permittivity of the dielectric material. And what is the electric field? It is the voltage applied for the distance between the two plates. Voltage divided by the distance between the two plates. So that is the electric intensity. So Q by A equal to epsilon into V by D. So I'm bringing that V, interchanging the positions of A and V. Basically, I'm interchanging the positions of A and V. What is Q by V? Q by V is the definition of capacitor. Charge per voltage is nothing but the capacitance value, and the value of C is found to be epsilon into A by D. Q by V equal to C, which is equal to epsilon into A by D. So here, flux density is nothing but, sorry, the dielectric density is nothing but charge per area, and epsilon, the remains as it is. The electric field intensity is nothing but the voltage divided by the distance between the two plates. So we have derived an expression for C, the capacitance. Capacitance is nothing but the charge per volt. Capacitance, this is a definition for capacitor. Charge per volt. What is the charge that is present between the dielectric terminals of the dielectric material, so that a voltage V is developed between the two plates of the terminal. So that is the definition for capacitor. Coming to the energy, what is energy? Energy is nothing but the work done to separate the charge through the potential V. There are charges between the two terminals. We need to separate these two charges against the voltage V. So energy is nothing but the work done to separate the charge through the potential V. So E is nothing but integral of 0 to V Q into dV. Q into dV. So instead of Q, I can write it as C into V. Just look at the previous equation, Q by V equal to C. Instead of the charge Q, Q is nothing but C into V. I will write C into V, and you differentiate and you integrate this equation. C is constant, and when you integrate V into dV, it will become V square by 2. So what is the energy stored in the inductor? E equal to half into CV square. So the energy stored in the inductor, the expression for energy stored in the inductor is nothing but half into C into V square. Energy is nothing but the work done to separate the charge through a potential of V. Work done to separate a charge through a potential of V. Is it clear? E equal to half CV square. புரிஞ்சுதாமா? Next we'll go to the energy density. We'll use the same formula. Just remember this expression C equal to epsilon into A by D. Remember this formula C equal to epsilon into A by D. Then we will calculate the energy density. Density meaning for 1 meter cube of the dielectric material, what is the amount of energy that the capacitor can store? That is the energy density. So this energy density is a very important parameter which will be specified in the data sheet of the capacitor, from which you can choose an appropriate capacitor for a DC to DC converter. So previous slide we derived an expression for the energy storage of the capacitor. Energy storage E equal to half into C into V square. The next is the energy density. Energy density, we will take the same expression equal to half into CV square. Instead of the C, I will use epsilon A by D. In the previous slide, we have derived C equal to epsilon A by D. E equal to V by D. So V equal to E into D. V square will be equal to E square into D square. So from this expression, the D and D will get cancelled. What will be remaining is 1 by 2 is 0.5. Epsilon will remain as it is. E square will remain as it is. What is A into D? A is the area of the dielectric material. D is the separation, distance of separation of the two plates. What is A into D? Anyone? What is A into D?
Volume.
It is nothing but the volume. So energy can be represented in another way, 0.5 epsilon E square into the volume of the dielectric material. Volume of the dielectric material. And the energy density, what is the energy density? Energy density is nothing but 0.5 epsilon E square joules per meter cube. So 1 meter cube, what is the amount of energy that is stored by the capacitor? Is nothing but the energy density. So we found out the energy density to be 0.5 epsilon into E square joules per meter cube. Joules per meter cube. Is it clear? Hope this point is clear. And this capacitance value in the previous slide, coming to this expression, the capacitance value C equal to epsilon into A by D. Can you tell me the equation for inductor? We have used the magnetic Ohm's law at a point and we have found out the inductor value. What is the inductor value? L equal to? What is the value of inductor? Anyone? L equal to? N square mu A by L. Do you remember that equation? L equal to N square mu A by L. So inductor, the value of the inductor was depending on the area of cross section, the permittivity, and the length of the magnetic path. So the same equation, this equation, I'm telling you about this equation. C equal to epsilon into A by D. Now the slide is visible. C equal to epsilon into A by D. So this capacitance value is related to the dielectric property of the dielectric material, which is permittivity, area of cross section A, and the distance between the two plates. So this equation you can relate it to the inductor. This equation you can relate it to the inductor. What is the inductor equation? L equal to N square mu A by L. L equal to N square into mu A by L. N is the number of turns, mu is the permittivity of the magnetic material, L is the length of the magnetic path. This is one more point I want to tell you. So now you have calculated what is the value of the capacitance from the dielectric Ohm's law at a point. You have also calculated what is the energy, V equal to half CV square, and from energy we have found out an expression for energy density also. The energy density is nothing but per meter cube of the dielectric material, what is the amount of energy the capacitor can store. So it is 0.5 epsilon into E square. E is nothing but the electric field intensity developed because of the charges present between the two terminals. Now let us take air as the dielectric material. Let us calculate the energy density. Let's take air as the dielectric material And let us now calculate the energy density. So same equation we will take, E equal to half CV square, energy equal to 0.5 epsilon into E square multiplied by the volume of the dielectric material. If you take the permittivity of the air is nothing but the same as the permittivity of free space. It is 8.83 into 10 power minus 12 farads per meter epsilon value, and the value of the electric field intensity, the amount of E that can be withstood by air is 3 into 10 power 6 volts per meter. So air as a dielectric material can withstand this amount of electric intensity, 3 into 10 power 6 volts per meter. So when you multiply everything, you will get the energy density to be 39.84 joules per meter. So if you use air as a dielectric material and manufacture a capacitor, the energy density of the capacitor, how much amount of energy can be stored per meter cube is 39.84 only. 13.84 joules only. Usually 4 joules will be 1 calories. Usually 4 joules will be 1 calories. So almost 10, only 10 calories can be stored when using air as a dielectric material. 10 calories means how much? It is raising the temperature of 10 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius, or raising the temperature to 10 degrees Celsius for 1 gram of water. So it is a very small energy. When you use air as a dielectric material, you will get the energy density only 10 calories. 10 calories or 39.84 joules. So 1 calorie equal to 4 joules. 1 calorie equal to 4 joules. So approximately 10 calories of energy can be stored when you are using air as the dielectric material and manufacturing the capacitor. Suppose if I want to store more energy, I will replace this dielectric material with some other material, polyester. For example, let us say polyester. So polyester, the permittivity is almost 4 times that of the air. 4 into 8.85 into 10 power minus 12 farads per meter. 4 into 8.854. 8.854 into 10 power minus 12 is the permittivity of free space. It's approximately 3 to 4 times the permittivity of air. And the amount of electric field intensity that can be withstood by polyester is 275 into 10 power 6. It is in megavolts per meter into 10 power 6. So when you use these two expressions, you will get the energy density to be in megajoules. Previously, it was for air it was joules. Now it is megajoules, almost 10 power 6 times higher, 1.34 megajoules per meter cube. So per meter cube of polyester as a dielectric material, you can store 1.34 megajoules of energy. 1.34 megajoules of energy, but this is theoretical. Don't get carried away with it. Practical capacitors. For example, if you use a bipolar capacitor, charge in the bottom terminal and the top terminal, if they are different, it is called as a bipolar capacitor. If you use a bipolar capacitor and the energy, if you calculate the energy, how will you calculate the energy of a capacitor? What is the formula for energy? Anyone? Ashwin?
CV.
Half CV square.
Half CV square. If you know the capacitance value and if you know the voltage rating of the capacitor, you can calculate the energy. So from half CV square, if you calculate the energy, it is 65 joules. And from the dimensions of the capacitors will be usually in cylindrical in shape. From the dimensions of the capacitor, you can find out the volume, area into the distance between the two plates, area into distance between the two plates. And if you calculate, the energy density comes up to 1 kilojoules per meter. This is for the practical capacitors. Theoretically, we saw when we are using polyester, the energy storage was megajoules. In terms of megajoules, in case of practical manufacturing of capacitors, the energy density is almost 1 kilojoules only, 1 kilojoules per meter cube. Let me show you a capacitor data sheet, then you can easily understand. And this is, I'm just sharing you a PDF. Please hold on. Can you see the PDF? தெரியுதாப்பா PDF? Look at the capacitor rating. It is 100 μF. The voltage rating is 750. So from this you can calculate the energy. Energy equal to half into C into V square. And you multiply the energy with the volume. How will you calculate the volume? Volume is nothing but when can we calculate? This is the length. This is the length 204 millimeters. 204 millimeters, and this distance is 85 millimeters. So using these dimensions from the data sheet, you can calculate the energy density depending on your application. So these are the dimensions of the capacitor. From the dimensions of the capacitor, you can calculate the volume A into D, and from the rating, capacitance value and the voltage rating, you can calculate the value of energy. So this is what I wanted to show you. So in the previous PDF, we have seen the capacitance value to be 100 μF and the voltage is 750 volts AC. When you multiply both, you will get 65 joules half CV square. And when you multiply those dimensions of the capacitor, you will get the volume to be 0.07. And from that, you can easily calculate the energy density. So this energy density, from this energy density, you can choose an appropriate capacitor for your DC to DC converter. Suppose if you are using a bipolar, unipolar electrolytic capacitor, this electrolytic capacitor can store more energy compared to that bipolar capacitors. So there is one more capacitor data sheet. Possibly, please note down this data sheet number B43670. B43670. The energy. Again, you can calculate it using half CV square and volume using the dimensions present in the data sheet. And if you see, it is 6.1 kilojoules per meter. Previously, how much it was? Previously, it is only 0.9. For bipolar type capacitors, the energy density is very less, almost only 1 kilojoules per meter cube. If you go for unipolar electrolytic capacitors, the energy density is 6.1 kilojoules per meter cube. 6.1 kilojoules per meter cube. So if you want to store more energy, always choose electrolytic type capacitors which are unipolar in nature. And this is the packaging of the capacitor. If you look at the diagram at bottom left, this is the packaging of the capacitor, how the capacitor is packaged. Basically, these two terminals are wound in the form of a cylinder. The two terminals are wound in the form of a cylinder, and in between these two terminals, dielectric materials are kept. So these two cylinders, windings, are wound in the form of a cylinder, and in between these two windings or two terminals, a dielectric material is kept, and the capacitor is packaged, usually cylindrical in shape. This is the packaging of the capacitor. And coming to the types of capacitors, there can be a bipolar capacitor or a unipolar capacitor. This metallized dielectric bipolar capacitor stores less energy when compared to the electrolytic unipolar capacitors. There is one more category of capacitors called as ultra capacitors. This works completely in a different principle, but there is a possibility to store more energy when comparing to the electrolytic capacitors. Those ultra capacitors we are not going to use in DC to DC converters. We will be using these electrolytic unipolar capacitors mostly, and in some cases we will use this metallized dielectric bipolar capacitors. And how can you specify capacitance. What is the specification of the capacitance? Specification of the capacitance basically is the voltage and the capacitance value. Voltage rating of the capacitor and capacitance value, which is specified in farads. So when 1 coulomb of charge gives rise to a voltage of 1 volt, it is called as 1 farad. C is nothing but Q by V. Q by V. When 1 coulomb of charge present between the two terminals of the capacitor gives rise to a voltage of 1 volt, it is said to have a capacitance value of 1 farad. And one more specification is the lifetime. So how long the capacitor will be working properly? That is standard lifetime. So if you operate the capacitor at 105 degrees Celsius, it will operate for 8,000 hours. So 8,000 hours is operating this capacitor continuously for 1 year. So if you cannot use the capacitor for a very long time. That is a disadvantage of this capacitor. So in your home, you can see when you are using this fan, your ceiling fan, for almost some 5 to 6 years, the speed of the fan will get reduced, and one point of time the capacitor will. So this is the reason. If you are operating the capacitor at 103 degrees Celsius, you can operate it satisfactorily for 8,000 hours. How can you look into the standard life of the capacitor? I will share you a data sheet now and tell you how to see the lifetime of a capacitor. So when you see this graph, you can easily understand. This is a data sheet of this electrolytic capacitor. This is a data sheet of the electrolytic capacitor. See this electrolytic capacitor. There are two terminals, two foil terminals here, and in between there is some method by which the area of cross section is utilized effectively, so that it can store more energy. So this is electrolytic capacitor. Two foil terminals, one at the top and bottom, and in between there is a dielectric material, and the area of the dielectric material is utilized very effectively, so that it can store more energy. You have seen the bipolar metallic capacitors can store energy up to 1 kilojoules only, whereas these electrolytic capacitors can store more energy, so around 6 to 10 kilojoules. So this is this electrolytic capacitor. So this is data sheet. This rated voltage is 350 to 450 volts. 350 to 450 volts. So the rated capacitance value is 560 to 5,300 mu, plus or minus 20. If we come to this life, how to identify the life of a capacitor. So when you look into this graph, you can see when you are operating at 100 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Celsius, when you are operating at 104 degrees Celsius, it will easily operate for 8,000 hours. It will easily operate for 8,000 hours. Whereas when the temperature decreases to 60 degrees Celsius, and the temperature decreases to 60 degrees Celsius, you can operate it for 250,000 hours. So basically, everything depends on the temperature. Everything depends on the temperature. So this is the standard lifetime of a capacitor. Standard lifetime of a capacitor. So specifications are voltage rating and capacitance value. And the standard lifetime is for an electrolytic capacitor, it is very less, only 1 year, only 1 year, 8,000 hours approximately. And there are some non-idealities in these capacitors, and we will discuss these. There are 3 non-idealities. We will discuss about these non-idealities and their effects on the performance of the capacitors, and then we will wind up the class. So there are 3 non-idealities. The first non-ideality is the equivalent series resistance, ESR, otherwise called as ESR. And the second non-ideality is equivalent series inductance, ESL. And the third non-ideality is called as leakage current, ILK. And all these 3 affects the performance of the capacitor. So while you're choosing the capacitor for a DC to DC application, you should look into the value of ESR, ESL, and ILK and appropriately choose the correct capacitor for your DC to DC converter. So what is this, the leakage current? Let us take into account the leakage current first. Whenever current flows through the terminals, the bottom terminal, and comes to the from the top terminal to the bottom terminal, usually because of this ohmic leakage, some amount of current will leak through the capacitor. When you apply a DC to a capacitor, the current through the capacitor will be 0. But because of this ohmic leakage, some leakage current will flow through the plates of the capacitor, and because of this ohmic leakage, we call that current as the leakage current ILK. And this leakage current affects the performance of the transformer. This leakage current affects the performance of the transformer. Please hold on for 1 minute. I'm just muting my audio. So the first non-ideality we discussed is leakage current. Leakage current arises when DC is applied to a capacitor. Direct current is applied to the capacitor. Usually the current through the capacitor should be 0. The current through the capacitor should be 0, but because of this ohmic leakage, current flows through the capacitor, and that leakage is called as the leakage current ILK, and that ILK affects the performance of the capacitor. The second non-ideality is your ESR, equivalent series resistance. When current flows through the terminal is nothing but the wire, there will be some opposition to the flow of current. So that opposition is called as the equivalent series resistance. When current flows through a wire, because of the resistive property, it will oppose the flow of current, and that property of opposition of this terminal to the flow of current through the capacitor is taken into account by the form of equivalent series resistance. It is called as ESR. And what is ESL? When current flows through a wire, a magnetic field is set up around it, and because of it, this ESL arises, equivalent series inductance, or equivalent series inductance arises. So all these 3, ESL, ESR, and ILK, affects the performance of the inductors. So a simple definition is given here. Conducting part, resistance in the conducting part results in a voltage drop, and this voltage drop is taken into account in the form of ESR. And whenever current flows through a wire, a magnetic field is set up, and magnetic field gives rise to a value L, and that is called as ESL. So let us see in detail. First, I will discuss the consequences of this ESR, ESL, and this leakage current. Then I will go to the data sheet and show you what is the value for ESR and ESL for an electrolytic and metallic capacitors. So because of this ESR, what is going to happen? There is going to be power loss in the capacitors. Because of this ESR, resistance RESR multiplied by the current flowing through the terminal gives rise to the power loss in the capacitor. Because of this power loss, there will be some temperature rise. Temperature rise theta equal to P into RTH, degrees Celsius per watts. Degrees Celsius per watts. Already I told you the life of the capacitor depends on the temperature level it is going to operate. So if you choose a higher value RESR, the lifetime will be very less. So you should take into account the value of ESR and choose an appropriate capacitor. What happens to LESL, this ESL, equivalent series inductance? Because of this equivalent series inductance, a resonance circuit is formed with a combination of L and C. A resonance circuit is formed, and the resonance frequency omega naught equal to 1 by 2 pi root of CLESL. This is the resonance frequency. If you operate beyond this resonance frequency, the capacitance will lose its property. It won't operate as a capacitor because the inductor beyond the resonance frequency will not allow the current to pass through the capacitor. So this is also one more consequence for the capacitor. Because of the resonance frequency of the LC coupled circuit, the capacitor will not exhibit its property properly. It will not operate as a capacitor because the inductor beyond the resonance frequency will not allow the current to pass through the capacitor. The last one is the leakage current. The leakage current is represented as a shunt loss. Again, there is some loss happening because of this leakage current in the capacitor VC into ILK. So these are the consequences you should keep in mind while choosing a correct capacitor for your DC to DC application. On the last slide, there are different types of capacitors depending on the applications. So there are coupling capacitors which couples the voltage or transfers the voltage between two circuits. So those are called as the coupling capacitors. There are power capacitors, low frequency and high frequency. For low frequency applications and high frequency applications, you can go for power capacitors. There are filter capacitors to smooth out the output voltage, like in the case of a half wave rectifier or full wave rectifier. There are pulsed capacitors. What is pulsed capacitors? Pulse capacitors are those which supplies a huge amount of surge current to the load at a short duration. If you want to supply a huge amount of current to the load for a short duration, pulse capacitors are used. This pulse capacitors, the charging time will be very long and the discharging time will be very less because at a very short duration, a surge of current is supplied to the load. There are pulse capacitors, there are damping capacitors to damp out the oscillations, voltage oscillations. We can go for damping capacitors. There are commutation capacitors, forced commutation of SCR. If you see commutation circuits, snubber circuits, it will be L and C, combination of L and C. For forced turn off of devices, you can use capacitors. And there will be resonant capacitors because of the resonant property. L and C, if you combine L and C, there will be resonance. Because of this resonance, these capacitors are called as resonant capacitors used in resonant DC-DC converters. So these are the applications of different types of capacitors. Applications of different types of capacitors. So by this, I will wind up the class. I will just show you this data sheet and tell you how to find out the ESL, ESR, and the leakage current value, and then I will wind up the class. See, this is this slide. Can you see the PDF now? Can you see the PDF? PDF தெரியுதாப்பா?
Yes, sir.
Okay, power dissipation. Look at the power dissipation. The solid line is natural cooling. With the help of natural cooling, look at the power dissipation. It dissipates only 35 watts of power. Dissipates only 35 watts of power at 20 degrees Celsius. But when the temperature increases to 80 degrees Celsius, it dissipates 0 watts of power. So this temperature is very important. So this can be seen from the data sheet also. This power loss happening because of this leakage current. ESR. Power loss happening because of ESR. And these dotted lines are forced cooling. Dotted lines are forced cooling. It's about the power dissipation. I can show you the ESR and ESR values. This L self is nothing but the ES L value. L self is 50 nanohenries, and this is the ESL value, and RS is 33 microohm is the ESR value. ESR value is 33 microohm. So you should see the correct values for L self and RS, and then choose the appropriate capacitor, and then choose the correct capacitor. If you look at this tabular column, this is RESR. ESR is the equivalent series resistance at 100 hertz, 20 degrees Celsius. It is 67, 54, 45, 30 for different values of capacitor. 67 milliohms. How does this ESR affects? It gives rise to heat, increases the temperature, increases the temperature. Look at the leakage current here. So the leakage current ILK 5 minutes 20 degrees Celsius, it is 4 microamperes multiplied by this value, 4 microamperes. And LESL value is also given here. The LESL value is also given. If the distance between the two plates is 64.3 mm, approximate LESL is 40 nanohenries. And if the distance is greater than 76.9 mm, the approximate ESL is 80 nanohenries. So from this, you can calculate the resonant frequency omega naught equal to 1 by 2 pi C into this LESL, and you can compare it with the frequency of operation of the capacitor and see whether the capacitor operates well below this resonance frequency. So these are some of the points you should understand while choosing a capacitor for your DC to DC converter. So I will just review and wind up the design of capacitors. So capacitors are devices to store energy, and they are used to provide turn-off dV by dt production. The characteristics equation, two forms are there: integral form and the differentiation form. The energy stored in the capacitor E equal to half CV square. The ampere second integral over one cycle will be equal to 0. Net accumulation of charges over one cycle is 0. You have seen the charge balance also. And we have derived the expression for C equal to epsilon A by D. Capacitance value is directly proportional to the area of cross section A, epsilon permittivity, and D is the distance between the two plates. And we have calculated what is the energy density. Energy density is nothing but per meter cube. What is the amount of energy the capacitor is going to store? 0.5 epsilon into E square. And we have used different materials: air, polyester, unipolar, and bipolar. And we have calculated what is the energy density. And we found out the electrolytic unipolar capacitor is capable of storing more energy when compared to your bipolar metallic capacitors. So we will be using electrolytic unipolar capacitors. And there are ultra capacitors also, but we are not going to use these ultra capacitors for this DC-DC converters. And specifications are voltage rating and capacitance, and standard life. Life depends on the operating temperature. You operate the capacitor at 105 degrees Celsius, an electrolytic capacitor at 105 degrees Celsius, it will last for 8,000 hours. It will last for 8,000 hours. And we finally saw three non-idealities in the capacitors. This is ILK, leakage current occurring because of ohmic leakage. This is equivalent series resistance and equivalent series inductance. because of the current flowing through the terminals. This ESR gives rise to power loss, this ESL gives rise to resonance, and this leakage current leads to shunt loss. And different types of capacitors depending on the applications also use. So hope all the concepts related to the capacitor are clear. If it is clear, if you don't have any doubts, I will wind up the class. புரிஞ்சுதாப்பா? ஏதாவது டவுட் இருந்தா சொல்லுங்க, இல்லாட்டி we will wind up the class. Is it clear? So your first half of your syllabus is over. First half of the first paragraph. Reactive elements in power converter circuits. Reactive elements are switches, inductors, capacitors, and transformers. So next part we will discuss about the primitive DC to DC converters and their analysis. So புரிஞ்சுதா? எல்லாருக்கும் புரிஞ்சுதா? இன்னும் ரெஸ்பாண்டே பண்ண மாட்டேங்கிறீங்க, இருக்கிறீங்களா இல்லையானு தெரியல. Okay, very good. So if everything is clear, I will wind up the class. So you upload the class notes in Google Classroom before 5 p.m. So next class we will discuss about the primitive DC to DC converters, that is ideal DC to DC converters, and how to analyze them. So thank you. Winding up the class now. Thanks.